I remember the day I made the decision to pivot the work that I was doing and launch what is now known as the Doyenne Agency. And this week, we celebrate our fifth birthday. I don't know how it happened or when it happened, but those 5 years went by like that. And so I'm going to share 5 lessons that I have learned over the past 5 years of leading the Doyenne Agency and how they have impacted my business and my life. I'm Dr. Nadia, founder of the Doyenne Agency and creator of Straight Talk About Sales. Tune in. So I'm excited because the team actually had to bring it to my attention that, hey, Nadia, we're turning 5. And it was like, oh yes. And so, yeah, I just had that moment of where did the time go? So it was this time 5 years ago when I, along with my counsel at the time, made the decision that I would make a formal pivot. And we launched the Doyenne Agency, which at the time had no name. It was just like, figure it out as you build the plane. And we're turning 5. It's like, oh my goodness. So I'm really, really excited and thrilled to be celebrating this milestone. And more importantly, I've had a chance to kind of sit back and think about what are some of the lessons that I've learned over the past 5 years. And oh my gosh, there were plenty. So I tried to narrow it down to just 5. So I went and had like a 3-hour video. So here we go. The first one is I can do hard things. And you're like, well, duh, Nadia, you've been in business how long? But I mean, when you think about the courage I think it takes to pivot, I know during the pandemic, a lot of people had to pivot. But when you pivot and there's like no real rhyme or reason, or people don't always see your vision, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to pivot, period. And I remember making this transition and I remember talking to my counsel at the time and just saying, I see and I don't see, right? There's the vision and there's certain things that I see and I see something forming, but I don't yet feel like I have enough of the vision to move forward. And they were like, okay. And together, we came up with this plan and just to really, help me get a clearer vision of how I wanted to move forward. But with this pivot, it challenged me because I was doing one thing and working with one type of client. And if you've been following me for any amount of time, you probably heard me talk about that. I was doing leadership training, leadership coaching, working with women in corporate. Some of those women wanted to leave, so we had a program for that. And, helping them take the leap and make that transition. But here I am saying, hey, we're going to launch this sales agency and we're going to provide sales support. And that was a completely different client. And I did not have all the answers, which is difficult for me sometimes because I have a background in engineering and we like data and we sometimes like spreadsheets. And there are times when that part of my brain definitely roused up. And so it was that. And so to make this pivot and not have all the answers, to not necessarily even have a very clear vision in my mind was challenging. And to further that, I made the decision that I was not going to transition and kind of phase things out. I made a hard stop and a hard start. So we ended relationships and contracts and, we came up with whatever agreements as we were phasing out our coaching program. And then we were like, okay, this is my focus. And I made that decision in the time because I was just like, I need all my focus, even though that was obviously saying no to some revenue. So talk about scary. Again, I can do hard things, but I needed my focus and I needed to not have my focus split in that moment because I was already dealing with a lot of voices that were not necessarily, internally supportive. So we made this decision, very challenging decision, and we went for it and we survived. Like it was looking back, right now that I have the benefit of having the 2020 vision and seeing what happened over the past 5 years. Wow. That's what I can say to that. Wow. And wow. Which leads to number two is just there's so much value and power, I would even add, in experimenting. And so with that, one of the things that I had to do was to give myself permission. I literally had to have a conversation with myself. I was like, Nadia, girl. And so I had to have a conversation with myself and say, you know what? This year and making this transition, give myself the permission to experiment, which meant that things weren't quite as set as I would like it to be. So, which meant that there were times when we would have a conversation, a sales conversation with one person, and I would be like, well, let's try this pricing structure. And then we would have a sales conversation with another person, and I would be like, let's try this pricing structure. And so we experimented for a while with just trying to find out what was the right mix. Now, one slight caveat, because I know some of you will be like, well, Dr. Nadia, you said have your offers ready. And I did. What I did not do in those sales conversations would go into the conversation. I would pick one before going into the conversation. So I didn't go into the conversation and then decide, oh, wait, I don't know which one of these I want to try. I would be like, okay, we're going to try this one. No matter how this conversation goes, this is what I'm selling during this conversation. And then that'll give us a data point to be able to track to see what's working. That worked in that season. Now we don't do that too much, because it works in a season. And then once we had the data, we're like, okay, that didn't work. That did work. This works best for where we are right now. That's where we went. But it also demonstrated to me that sometimes you need to have that level of flexibility while you're figuring some things out. And then once you have the data, then we were like, those things didn't work. Now this is the best structure for what it is that we want to accomplish, where is I see the company going and the types of, engagements and people we want to work with. Then that just made more sense. But in the beginning, I wasn't really sure. And at the time, I didn't know anyone that did the type of work that I did. So I didn't even have a whole lot of data necessarily to go research and do a whole bunch, because it was just like, yeah. So there I was. This is where I was. And I say that because there are times even now I have to say, Nadia, I have to go back and be like, remember 5 years ago? Right. And just to give myself sometimes permission to experiment, to try new things as we have continued to kind of pivot and open up and offer different things. So when we first started 5 years, we only had one offer, just one. Talk about a one-hit wonder. That was it. And we only offered done for you sales support. And we did that for years. And then one day I went to my counsel and I was like, I'm going to go crazy if I don't get to teach somebody something. So that was when we started adding in some more training. But then it was capacity and balance and all the things. Like it just got to be a little crazy. So then that kind of came off the burner and went back on and blah, 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 right? So it's just been this progression of things. But I think it's important to remember that there are seasons when it is, let me experiment. There are seasons, whether it's within the business or market, it could be personal, because a lot of things have happened both in my business and in my personal life over the past 5 years that kind of dictate how you flow or how you want to see your team flow. And so being able to have that level of experimentation is also nice to have, and to do it in a controlled environment. Like we're not just doing stuff willy-nilly and throwing spaghetti at the wall. The third thing and lesson, and this one is really powerful, is the power of focus. Let me tell you, the power of focus. So literally my counsel, when we put together this plan, and when I say we, it was probably mostly them, put together this plan. I had a 5-year plan. It was beautiful, beautiful for my little engineer brain. I was so happy. My left brain was like, yes, and check boxes and all this stuff. But I remember so clearly having this plan, and it was the to-dos and the do not do's. And I love that. For me, that was so powerful for me, because it was like, it helped my squirrels. And if there's anyone else out there, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And it was like, no, Nadia, focus. You have one offer. You have one job. At this point, you're having conversations and you're letting people know about this pivot that you've made. And we are focused on getting your first 6 clients. I don't know why we picked 6, but it sounded like a great idea at the time. So that's the number we had, 6 clients by, I think it was like 6 or 7 months. Over the next 6 or 7 months, see if you can get your first 6 clients. That's all you do. We're not creating any online programs. We're not updating your website. We're not even going to worry about the name of the company at this point. This is all we're going to do, ma'am, is this one thing, which, you know, you can relate, is hard when you get ideas. And I remember there was this one time where I was completely off. I was all off focus. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to create an on-demand training and I got to get all my modules. And I don't even know, like, I just was going down this rabbit hole. And I had a counsel call and they were looking at me like, what are you talking about? You have one job. Focus. And so it was the power of having that written focus, but also having the support to be like, girl, I need you to focus. And then once you hit this milestone, this is what we do. And then once you get here, we can talk about building the website. And once you do this, and there's so many things, it was so powerful. But one of the things that really helped was it just helped me keep on track because clearly I needed it. But it also just helped us to get the results so stinking fast. So when I look back and within that first 18 months of making this decision, we've done over $1 million in sales on behalf of our clients. Like, it was stupid crazy. Like, what? Power of focus. So yeah, power of focus. Trust me. Huge, 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 huge. Number 4 is, it is part of our values here at the Doyenne Agency, but I've definitely been able to, I've seen it before, but I think over the past 5 years, it really highlighted just how invaluable relational currency is. Relational currency is invaluable. And it is those relationships with your peers, with your people in your mastermind, with your coaches, your former coaches, with your colleagues. Like, it was just unbelievable. And to really have such a focus and to be so focused on building genuine relationships, to be able to refer people, to have people referred back, to have people say, oh, wait, I think I know someone. And to just see just how invaluable it really is has just been game changing. And it's one of the core tenets of what we teach when it comes to sales and our sales processes and things like that, is the power of relationship. And not only looking at your relationships or your interactions with other people in your business, it's so transactional. Sometimes it's so easy to only be focused on what's happening in that one moment. And I invite you to take a step back and say, you know, what could this relationship be from a broader perspective? And again, it could be your clients, it could be your former clients, it could be your peers, people in your mastermind, it doesn't matter. And I think when you really embrace and embody that value of relationship and putting the respect in it and really honoring the fact that this is another person, but really looking at it beyond what is just happening in this one moment, it really makes a difference. And I know it was huge when we were making this shift. I saw relationships that I had made with people years prior that then in this, you know, during this focus time and really connecting and having conversations and really being focused of how all of that came full circle. And I remember after, you know, I'd been doing this for a while, and I was having a conversation with my husband, Toby. And I was like, babe, do you remember, you know, when I was in this mastermind back in 2013, or, you know, when I went to this event back in 2012, and that one time I went to Montana and I was sitting around the executive boardroom and I met this person or that person. And he didn't necessarily remember all of the names of the people because, you know, I talk and meet a lot of people. But he was just like, oh, because then I was able to say, well, that relationship now, years later, yielded a connection that led to this, or yielded this that led to that. And that person connected me with that person that, I was able to just be able to take that step back and kind of trace, the lineage of how all of this came to be. And it was so many full circle moments. And it was just that big demonstration to me, and which is why I feel it's so important as part of your sales process. And when you look at your system, is relationships matter. And sometimes we don't value them. Even myself, even though, this is one of our, really, it's why it's one of our values that we have to even remind ourselves. We don't always value relationships in the way that I think we should. And not so much for what we can get out of them, because we always have the opportunity to also give and to really sow and to just plant good seeds. And you just never know when you get to reap a harvest. So it's invaluable, in my opinion. And then the last thing I would share, which was honestly a very challenging lesson. And you're going to crack up when I tell you what it is, especially coming from someone who has a doctorate in leadership, who did leadership training and coaching for years, who wrote a book about leadership. It's like Nadia. And that is, there's nothing like having a good team. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you. And I guess it's related to relationship but it's different. Like that. I was talking about all the relationships. Let's talk about your team for a minute. There is nothing like having a good team. And for so long, I felt like I was going at it fairly solo, or I had one person on my team and I was shouldering a lot. Like there are days, even now, I look back over the past 5 years and I'm like, I don't even know how I did that. Like that just makes no kind of good sense. But I got through it. And that season of grace is gone because I could not do it again right now. And I wouldn't want to, because I have an amazing team. And I remember when we were, kind of entering that season, and it was like, I don't know, all the things come up, and all the fears, all the doubts, all the insecurities, because I talk about how leadership exposes your insecurities. So does sales. Guess what? So does leading a business. It's like, And I didn't know, do I do this? How do I do this? Who do I bring on my team? What does that look like? It was just really, really challenging. But to be on the other side of it, I made a ton of mistakes. My team will probably tell you I make a ton of mistakes on a weekly basis. But they know that when things aren't working well, I always start here. Like, what can I do better or differently to support you? They know that I have their best interest at heart. And they really support the vision. And so we are doing this together, and it has just been phenomenal. I won't go back to the way it was. And it's amazing to have that support, to have a team. It can be stressful at times because, there's always also that level of weight. There's a level of additional responsibility that I now have on my shoulders because of having them a team and, being able to compensate them and all the things that come with that. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, to try to build the big vision that you have in your mind and in your heart alone is just overwhelming. And I often have used this analogy, so I'm going to use it today as well, and I've talked about it, I should say, in a lot of my leadership trainings. And it was, have you ever seen a skyscraper built by one person alone? And the answer is no. And I would have people in the audience, in the training, I would be like, well, I want you to first close your eyes. And I want you to think of this amazing building, like make it your headquarters, your company headquarters. And you think about what that will look like and all the things you would have and how your name would be. Like, I want you to think about it. And someone had spinning floors. Like, it was amazing. And it was just like, you have this big vision. We all have a big vision for whatever it is. And your vision looks different from my vision, but that doesn't make it any less big. And I was just like, why? Why do we have these big visions? And then we attempt to go out and build skyscrapers alone, right? We pick up our toolbox and put on our hard hat, and we have our blueprints in front of us. And then we just set out like, we're just going to build this alone, and we won't need support and we don't need help. And that's not true. And so I admonish you, as I have had to learn, that yes, there is amount of trust. There are things that you can do to make the transition easier, to better prepare your team, to make that smoother. You are going to make mistakes. You are human. And it's not the end of the world. And again, once you get the team and you find your groove, there's nothing like it. It is simply amazing to be able to build this, to do business and life with team and to have them support the vision. And so if you don't have a team or you're thinking about a team, I invite you to just continue to work through. Trust me, there was a lot of working through over here. The things that come up and the excuses that we give, we get creative when we come up with our excuses around why we don't want to do, or we shouldn't, or we should continue to delay building team. So if there was one thing, and I'm going to talk about, we'll do a part 2, especially thinking about future, but I would say this, there was one thing that I would do differently over the past 5 years, it would have been to do team sooner, to just be willing to jump in and figure it out instead of feeling, like, I did that far too long, far too long. And I've seen it as, a challenge that sometimes other business owners, especially when we come and we work with them, with clients and building sales team, it's like, you're already at this place that just makes it a little more challenging and that much more because of the amount of time you waited to take this leap to really just plunge in and work on getting the team and the support. So those are my 5 things. It has been a fabulous 5 years. I have learned so much. I've grown so much. I've just, exceeded things and goals that I didn't even think I could, to do or accomplish, especially in the amount of time. Like I thought it was going to take longer to hit certain milestones than it did. So I'm excited to see what the next 5 years will bring. And so thank you for being a part of this community, for rocking with us over here at the Doyenne Agency. We look forward to continuing to serve you. Stay tuned because we have a new podcast that's coming out soon. So we're going to be able to take our message and our impact and just be able to impact far more lives. We have some new trainings on deck that we're going to be doing both this year and in the years to come. So we're just really excited to have you here along on this journey with us. And so if there's any way that we can support you, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can schedule time to chat with us at thedoyenneagency.com. There is a link there to schedule some time to just learn more about how we can support you and working with us here at the agency. All right, this is Dr. Nadia signing off, going to celebrate 5 years here leading the agency. And I'm looking forward to many, many more years to come. Take care. I'll see you soon.